I've got a great panel. I'll introduce one by one. So Dr. Anjana Rajkumar. So ma'am, if you could come. So Dr. Anjana is a senior researcher R&D at Hitachi. She's a PhD from IISc Bangalore. She's worked in water resources management, and she also is specializing in advanced infrastructure monitoring. It's called AIMS for smart city applications, and energy and water is her specialization. Please welcome Dr. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Bragadesh Damodaran, Vice President, Innovation Industry at Capgemini. Mr. Bragadesh has a lot of global experience, 20 years in a leadership role with Capgemini. I think you're going to hear a lot of interesting projects which they've done globally on digitalization, data and stuff. So please welcome Mr. Bragadesh. Next we have, I think the superstar of Karnataka, Mr. Ganesh, the founder of FluxGen. Please, do I need to introduce you? Everybody knows you. So FluxGen is a company in the space of IoT and data. They have worked with multiple industries and buildings, solving problems on water management. So thank you, Ganesh. So I think we'll start the panel. They're all waiting to hear you guys. So I have a few questions. So these questions are primarily around data and how do you use data. So I think the first question, we believe that has more impact. How do you create impact with data, right? So if you can actually touch upon something that you've done as an example of a project where you've worked in terms of data. So, Madam, would you like to start?
So hi everyone, and once again thank you for inviting me for this panel. And so I come from a domain where we design core AI/ML models for addressing societal issues, and water happens to be one of the key of them. And we have worked with quite a lot of government agencies, including KUWSD. And from a government perspective, they're always, interested in adopting technologies like AI, ML, etc. But infrastructure-wise, there is quite lack. In case if you have, for example, if you have to deal with a water leakage problem in a network, you need a different infrastructure for that. You need sensors, you need flow sensors, pressure sensors, etc. And that has to be in place, and we analyze those data to see how much the leak is, where the leak is, etc. So in that aspect, even government is very interested in adopting, but as I told, the issue is mainly with the lack of infrastructure. And even recently, we did actually have a project with Karnataka where we were able to show that the leakage in this particular part of Karnataka was so high, and we were able to actually bring it down, not bring it down exactly, at least reduce the loss of water, as well as reduce the time taken to localize where exactly the water is being lost. So such kind of technologies we were able to introduce, and around the world also there are so many such technologies available which can be adopted given we have this infrastructure. So just leakage is just one of the components. For example, even with asset management, if you talk about, we have in Bangalore itself huge pumps that bring water from Kaveri to the treatment plant, and those pumps are very old. And if you actually retrofit those assets with sensors such as vibrations and pressures along the pipelines, we might be able to build models that can actually tell how the performance of those assets are and to indicate where exactly or when it might fail. So such kind of technologies are available and can be used as well. So this is a couple of examples. I don't want to get names.
No, so I think the impact that you're creating is the sensors that are giving you the data, and then how you read it. Right? So I think, Ganesh, you have stories of how, because the impact story is something everybody wants to know. And I think if you can just tell us some impact story of data that you got from water, and if it is in a rural context, that would be really wonderful. But any other project also.
So I'll try to pick a facility which is actually in a rural setup, but it's a factory. Right? It gives employment to a lot of people in that region. It's close to Kundigal region. There are a lot of villagers get employment there. This facility is a European company, 26 billion euro worth company, which makes manufacturing setup. So one thing that we always, the managing director is very passionate about environment, right? So he's gone over and beyond certain level of enthusiasm about the water compared to most people. So what he asked me these 3 questions to me when we started this project. Ganesh, how do we know where the water is getting wasted, where the water is getting leaked? And is my rainwater harvesting system working fine or not? Is it working as good as it is working on the ribbon cutting day? Is my wastewater treatment actually treating as much as it is required according to the external compliance and internal compliance? And am I optimally using my wastewater treatment plant, or am I using more energy to produce the same kind of result with a lesser energy? So that's when we actually decided to digitize their entire infrastructure, right? And they get water from multiple sources. One, of course, a municipality, groundwater, and they have been able to implement rainwater harvesting system. I think farmland had implemented their rainwater harvesting system, and they had their sewage treatment plant, effluent treatment plant. But this question had to be addressed, right? So we digitized, and we were able to digitize their consumption at various points, storage at various locations, their wastewater treatment, their COD, BOD, TDS, PS, COD, all those points, including the rainwater harvesting performance, mainly the one which was harvested and filling their rainwater tank. So after that, we were able to see the whole water balance chart, and that way we were able to help them where the water was getting wasted, leakage. Not only that, we were able to understand that rainwater harvesting system had some certain issue because of which they were not able to fully get it. Like there was like almost 30% of water which was not actually harvested. So we could fix those issues. And also the wastewater treatment, we came up with a new product, to be honest. We were able to improve the performance of their blower by putting a VFD, and we were able to use some algorithms to improve the performance of their variable frequency drive, because of which they were able to reduce their energy consumption by almost like 18%, right? And of course, they wanted to further reduce their water intake. That's why we met our friend Vikas Brahmawar. I called him, and he runs this company called Boson Water. And he was able to even put up his tertiary treatment. Now they were able to further reduce. So using data, we were able to, using the water line diagram, water balance chart, and then understanding how much water is coming from rainwater and to become zero, we were able to arrive at this. Today this facility is water positive.
So you're saying 30% of freshwater dependency would have easily come down in the village as in water.
Exactly, right?
It's a huge impact.
So that's the, but still there's scope to improve. But yeah, that's where I pause.
So I think now you've seen an example of how it can be done in a rural space. So I think Bragadesh, if you can speak about your global experience on this, it'd be really helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Varun. So as they say, data is the new oil, right? So you see large amounts of data getting generated. You talk about in the water industry, the smart meter and the IoT kind of a data which gets generated. Then you talk about how do you use that particular data for your decision making. This involves your AI and big data coming into play. Right, and then how are you integrating all this through your SCADA integration, through IoT, this is OT, IT and ET together, right? Operational technology of SCADA, the information technology, and I would call it intelligent technology of the IoT side of it, and also you're talking about your enterprise systems, your ERPs and all those things. And we see, as my friend was talking about, reduction in a couple of clients. I've seen with global clients, where we have seen installing these IoT sensors, where they are able to generate a lot of data, which has helped one of the geographies in reducing their leakage management detection. And they were able to realize cost recovery from it and use that particular cost recovered amount into various other initiatives. So you see a two-prong approach here. It's not only they're able to generate data, analyze that particular data, understand what the customer needs are, and get into that hyper-personalization kind of a scenario, but also take that cost recovery and start investing in another area which could generate a lot of ROI for them, right? So data is definitely important, and the way the world is heading right now, a lot of data getting generated out of different systems, and there are of course some challenges also. How do you manage this particular
Next
area?
point is challenges.
Yeah. So should I continue on the challenges as well?
Yeah, I think. I mean, just to if you could mention about the number of meters that you've
Yeah.
installed.
So overall, I would say that I have an experience close to installing 20 million plus meters, smart meters globally, and this is across the geographies, working with different regulatory and aligning to their IT requirements and the regulatory requirements, and also seeing it is relevant because some of these regulated organizations need to present to their parliaments and different members, right? Whether the smart metering implementation was efficient for them, are they able to do some cost recovery, and are they able to create that niche out of it? Because some of our systems in the water industry are legacy systems, right? And we also have, how do you integrate that and you ensure that smooth transition happens? So these are some of the examples, but I can keep on dwelling on this further, Varun.
Sure. I think we have 18 minutes, so we have other questions as well. So I think we'll go into the challenges. Maybe Bragadesh, you can start, and then because today we have the government here, and your technology companies and global experience is there. So I think Bangalore as a city requires, Bangalore and the entire Karnataka as a state has to be water positive. So I think for that, technology implementation could be a challenge. So if you could just brief us on some of the global experience.
Absolutely. So some of my experience which I felt was, first is understanding what is the current landscape, right? What is the existing system? You would be talking about IoT, big data, Gen AI and everything, but can it integrate to your existing landscape? So that is the first challenge we see, because we get investments, we get plans, policies aligned to those initiatives, but integration component first. Second thing is, once you start developing this, I think we should start doing a lot of pilot projects initially to see test waters. Do we have the skill set to support that particular activity? And do we have the scale to take it forward? Because once you start implementing this IoT and this some of those fancy systems around, we need the support system also, right? So you need the O&M to take place apart from the CAPEX, because there's CAPEX involved in it initially for your hardware and installation. And the third thing is, during the pilot phase, I think we need to test whether we are able to generate some predictable ROI out of it, because we don't want to go a big bang approach and then seeing that the investments were not made right. And these could be some of the challenges. So it could be skills, integrations, and also once you start integrating all this, then you have the cyber security element coming in, right? You need to store the data, and the storing of that particular data, is it on renewable sources, right? So it can't be like you're running a fossil fuel and trying to store that particular data and you're not meeting your net zero goals. So it's like a vicious cycle.
My next question was on sustainability. So I think, so challenges like you mentioned, I think, one is the initial piloting and that opportunity. So Karnataka has been a state that has been allowing
Absolutely.
a lot of projects like that. So I'm sure it's a way to understand the technology better. So Ganesh, on the challenges, do you think? I think you have expertise in IoT and that space. So on sensors, what do you think are the challenges? I mean, where should India go in sensors? Karnataka as a state, the leaders in sensors. What do you think?
See, honestly, you also know we are in a similar domain, and most of when we started off, our data were completely erroneous, right? I mean, we were not able to create a proper data validation when we were able to get this from various flow meter, level sensor, quality sensors. One of the challenge in this industry is that, I mean, there is water, depending on the type of water, you have to use the right sensors. So that, I think, at least we figured out, right? Whether you want to use ultrasonic flow meter, if it's a fresh water, you choose a telecromatic, again use for treated water or a sludge and other things, right? Over and beyond, we realize even then there is an accuracy issue. So that's why we partnered with Microsoft Research on something called as dependable IoT. So this was a work where the data that we are going to get, how do you validate whether this data is, you can depend on this, right? So they came, there's a term again called verified telemetry. So that way, I think partnering with Microsoft Research at that time kind of helped us how we can make our data more reliable, right? Because all this AI and all those things make no sense if the data itself is wrong. So we were trying to do something in AI when our data itself was wrong. Fortunately, we were able to fix a lot of these things with this stack that we were able to collaborate on. And over and beyond, I think it is very important to calibrate these sensors, right? And how do you do that in a more scalable way, right? I can't believe when you put 20 million meters, right? And I can't imagine if our company does 20 million meters, how would we manage? So I think that is one area. How do you ensure the calibration of these sensors are reliable, and how can you do this remotely and partner with other
ecosystems? AI can do that? Help you in doing that?
See, I mean, AI can be utilized, and you can also use over-the-air firmware update and various other tools can be utilized. But at the same time, you need to have something where is a verified flow meter which can be dependent on for this time. So how do we come up with these things is also a challenge. I think that needs to be addressed. So that's where I think partnering with a lot of MEPs and various other service providers is very important. That is one thing. And over and beyond, I think how do you enable the workforce to interact with these? Basically, we are telling them to interact with a machine, right? And to empower them rather than trying to take away their jobs. So how tech and machines and this one will collaborate together to make sure that we can save water. That where I think the upskilling is also required. The last piece, of course, we have also come up with our own GenAI platform, right? We are actually trying to put a GenAI platform where there's a skill gap in the sector. You, of course, did a civil engineering. I don't know how many people take up civil engineering today, right? So how do you ensure there's a skill gap that would address this shortage of workforce in water sector? That's why we developed, using all this data, we are able to ask any question about water. So imagine a person, may not be as qualified as Dr. Anjana as a PhD, but somebody who's a PhD in water will be answering all your questions using all the data. And this would be have a back-end data from various already existing information and able to...
This is a generative AI.
Kind of thing, yeah. So this, for this to survive, this data should be accurate. If not, all these things will fail. That's where I think we all have to utilize AI to find out where the data itself is correct, accurate or not.
So can I say that the big data name has changed, is becoming more generative AI? Just ask the question and you get
I mean, big data and then GenAI on top of that, you will be able to come with meaningful outcomes. But we are still long way ahead. I think we're just at a very nascent stage.
So ma'am, I think you have worked extensively on research on these subjects, because sensors, I have been in the space, I've seen sensors are the biggest challenge that we have. So on sensors and on the entire challenge over the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think they have covered almost all the challenges required. Capacity building and calibrating the sensors and everything. But I need to point a very specific part. So you're working in water systems that are aging. So the question is, are you willing to invest a very huge capital on a system that is already aging and needs retrofitting? So when talking about IoT and data, we always have to have a final goal in mind. It's like, what is the system that you are trying to work on? Is it an old system or a new system? Are you willing to retrofit the system? So those kind of understanding comes from integrating domain knowledge in decision making, and for that you need data. So it is kind of like a loop. For you to take a good decision, there will be challenges, but in order to overcome the challenges, you need data. So, someone has to, definitely the government has to take the call and start investing in IoT, big data, and installing sensors. Probably not. And even in installing sensors, you don't need to install everywhere. So you need to have an optimized approach. So if you have 3 pipes, you don't need flow meter in all the 3 branches. You need only 2. So that's like a basic mathematics. So similar way, there are models that are built on networks which are well developed. Probably we need to fine-tune with whatever limited data we have, and need to have a, optimized approach. So if you have 3 pipes, you don't need flow meter in all the 3 branches. You need only 2. So that's like a basic mathematics. So similar way, there are models that are built on networks which are well developed. Probably we need to fine-tune with whatever limited data we have and need to have an approach, that is an optimized location of sensors, etc., that can give us probably not the optimal output, but something that is better than what is currently going on, and we can build on that. A stepwise approach for improving the system, even in a even from an IoT big data perspective, is required. And for that, I mean, I saw many of the panelists who came before me talking about having pilots. So even in this space, we need to have more pilots and encourage more public-private engagement.
So that's awesome. So I think you're mentioning pilots. So I mean, my startup actually is the winner of the Grand Challenges Karnataka, which was the first Grand Challenge in the state. And it was like, they said, I'll give you a pilot, do it in 3 buildings. They gave 6 months. We proved the pilot. Then they said, I'll give you 50 lakhs. In that, they said, what will you do? I said, 50 buildings we'll do it. Today, 300 buildings are digitalized for wastewater treatment plants, only because of the initiative of Karnataka government. So I think people like us would be sitting with some hardware without, so there's a lot of data also generated. So I'm saying this is a state which can do it much, much faster and efficiently, and we have a problem to solve also. So I think thank you for those inputs. So next, I think that was not there in my agenda, but because you guys have, when you have some real experience on the global perspective. So what are the business models, or is there some models that a government can look at it to work with technology companies and making this more viable?
Yeah, I would say more on the public-private kind of a partnership, which is already happening at this point in time, but some bit of an acceleration, and also identify, because I see our government is way ahead compared to any other government. We have the information, we have the data, and we have the appetite coming from the government to go ahead with the new technologies. And there are different models which are aligned to the regulatory requirements globally, and so that there is not too much of an impact coming from the regulation angle, and also it's not impacting the customer as well as the government. So that's like a tripartite kind of a view is what happens globally. And I think we already have the existing systems here, and we should go ahead and start adopting it. The other area which I want to highlight is on the sustainability front, because while we adopt the technology, we have to ensure that we are not losing out on our net zero goals, right? Because the amount of carbon footprint on a technology is very high, and we have to see, are we using the renewable sources and adopting the newer technology, while also you're ensuring what is the long-term goal we are planning to achieve. One example which I want to share is the Capgemini office, which I come from in Bangalore, and all the India offices, we are completely running on net zero at the moment. It's completely on net zero. We have our solar plants, we have our water treatment plants, and we are trying to take that model globally. How do we accelerate our own net zero operations faster? So this could be some of the activities which are taken to the client, and I'm happy to share how did we do at a pilot phase, and we could scale that up, right, in a larger scale. And that could be one of the models which I think.
So you're saying there's potential for government to generate revenue through this.
Absolutely.
So then I think there's enough and more projects. So Ganesh, I think the next point is on sustainability. So I wanted you to touch upon some rural examples, because I think today, we are talking about Bangalore, all these cities. Cities does have problems, but rural, how do you think that a startup today who wants to kind of prove themselves in a rural? So what are the kind of technology intervention on sustainability that can happen? And you're also the leading sustainability mafia, so you have a lot of people who are also trying to solve problems, right? So,
see, actually I started my work in water and rural, to be honest. That only became a paper that we presented in Berkeley for reducing water consumption in agriculture, and how you could use sensors to track the soil moisture and suitably irrigate, right? And I would be happy to share the paper sometime with the audience if there's a way to. What kind of really became challenging as an entrepreneur to solve something at the bottom of the pyramid was the unit economics, right? So first of all, water is not priced the way it would help in building a profitable or a sustainable business. So that's what actually pushed me towards working in more in industrial side of things, right? So I think one area that would government would probably think is is how do you incentivize water projects, right? Or how do you incentivize large corporates to get if they work on water projects? within the outside the fence as well, not just within the fence, right? And that way, you're making not just government take ownership on solving for water, you're enabling corporates. One such example is again, take example, we have been partnered with Microsoft for their water replenishment project. They have 2030 project goal. They are not just looking at their facility become water positive, which they have already become to an extent. They are now looking at financing projects that would lead to enough water abundance in that region. So now if whether it is a CSR or various other initiatives, you make water at the center of the table discussion, right? Saying that prioritize if you do projects in water within a rural area or even in a lot of putting up watershed projects, right? I think that can enable, like Bangalore is the place where a lot of IT companies are there. So some of them could be directed towards financing water projects. I think that could be a way we solve the problem of water. As I was just hearing, right, like after Rajasthan, Karnataka is the most water stressed state. Sure. So how do we convert that challenge into an opportunity for...
So you're saying there's a real need for financing and then...
Yeah, I think financing from private entities and large corporates.
So what is your take on the technology? I mean, do you think the technology is ready for rural related problems?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you want to incentivize somebody, obviously you need measurement, tracking. If you don't measure, you can't manage. So that way I think there should be need for technology in terms of monitoring at the, whether it is the quantity, quality, or whether it is satellite imagery, or whether it is the water at the sensor level, IoT, or remote sensing in various other format. All kinds of way to track water. There should not be any, this technology alone should be used. It should be a holistic use of all form of technology to see the performance of these watershed projects. That's when you can actually say, yeah, this is we are incentivizing and we are delivering on that incentive. That's when that is possible. Yeah.
So I think Jal Jeevan Mission has actually given us how to get the scheme and monitor the scheme. So that's a solution there. So actually one more project that comes to my mind is, so I had a sudden call from the Minister for Environment and he said there's a problem in water level in Tungabhadra Dam and there are industries drawing it, there's a kind of issue that's happening. Can you do something on that? So we went there and we figured out that by digitalizing all their pumping stations, right? Today there's no theft. There's no, people are not, like there's data which says there's no illegal way of taking water. So in a rural space, tech is used to create more of value to the water that has been used effectively. So I feel what you are doing a lot in sustainability space in city should have some impact on the rural side, which will add a lot of value. So I think my humble request to you is that you should look at more of,
in fact, we are looking at all the food processing and beverage companies which are our customers to actually go through the farm to fork.
Factories are drawing a lot of water and they are in rural areas. I think if we can manage that water, reduce by 30%, 40%.
No, not only that, how do we go to the end of value chain, right? I mean, if we are getting food from somewhere manufactured, we should go all the way where the food is produced, agriculture. So that's where we are targeting. How do we work with our corporate who can actually do farm to fork level of tracking? That's where probably we'll end up doing agriculture, water management.
Would you like to tell us what Hitachi as a company where you represent, what are your plans in sustainability and...
Hitachi also has a very strong sustainability goal, and our main motto itself is harmony, integrity and pioneering spirit with sustainability and to deliver to the society as much as possible. And we do work with quite a lot with agriculture sectors and other industries for carbon footprint monitoring, which includes water also. And we do have, Hitachi doesn't, at least here, we don't believe in having a global solution applied to a local problem. We believe in taking global solution, engineering it for the local things. For example, even for a sustainability carbon footprint monitoring platform developed in Japan might not work for an Indian system. What we do, we take only that base technology, engineering for our need. So in the same lines, we do have, water, carbon, energy, everything is integrated, and so is renewable energy. And we are looking more into connecting the dots between water, energy, and food. From a data perspective, we should be sure we have more control over the data and what we do with the data and to provide decision makers recommendations to apply on their system in this aspect. So that is actually our goal.
So I think before we open up questions, I think last I'd like to know about what do you think are the future trends in this space and how Karnataka government can actually add, make sure that they have the roadmap.
Absolutely. So I think the future trends we touched upon is something on the AI and IoT, and focusing further on the IoT, you would have seen it runs predominantly on algorithms, and the future is looking at how do you bring in more advanced artificial neural networks into play, right, and bring in that accuracy around. That's one area to look into. And also, once we are talking about this robust technology, adopting it, and are we ensuring that we are aligning to the sustainability goals and sustainability measures, right, while adopting, that could be another area. And the public-private partnership, I said, because most of us are all said we have the technology to use it as a test bed, as a pilot to take it forward. We have some success stories globally to share, and that could be taken forward. And I can share another example globally for one of the Belgium organizations. We used a water solution into an electricity market, and we were successful, and we were able to show ROI. So that's how related it is, the industry. And so I would say some of these advancing technologies, and our government has already got the appetite and is in the forefront of doing it. I think we should go ahead and start accelerating some of these activities. But also keep in mind the cybersecurity issue here, because there'll be a lot of data being stored on the cloud, and we have to ensure that proper protocols are being met while we're keeping that particular data, because some of them are secure data into it. So that needs to be taken care of, and of course we have to see whether it's on-prem, off-prem, and all those kind of complications involved. And also see what is our current landscape and how quickly can our current force can adopt it. Our field force, our field engineers, right? They're able to quickly get trained on it and start utilizing it and take it to scale, I would say.
Sure. So Ganesh, I'm to give you a problem statement. So all hospitals in Karnataka is going to be IoT, smart water management enabled. So what do you think is the value that they will get, Karnataka government will get by doing this, and you're going to do this project?
See, one of the hospital director we have supplied our system actually told me this, Ganesh, we are here to heal, not to harm the planet, right? And without their knowledge, they're harming because, all the medical waste and all the drugs and chemicals that are used for treating the patient end up going into their treatment plants, and sometimes the zero liquid discharge is not proper. It will eventually become part of their water source. Right? So that's how his concern was, are we harming by without our knowledge? I think when you actually digitize, you're ensuring as minimum water is utilized, right? If there are like one of the hospitals, even Mysore Kings used to get treated was GKNMH hospital, where we have actually set up our system. We've been able to not only reduce their water consumption by reducing their water tanker load, now they have also been able to ensure their water is treated in the most optimal way, and they even got a lead water score of 14 out of 15 while global average is 10. So I think that might be a standard they have set. Similarly, I think if we have a basic minimum standard in terms of water score that each hospital in Karnataka would get in terms of what's the zero liquid discharge strategy and the water quality is to mark, and even the water consumption per bed basis, right? How are they optimizing it? So that way, I think there will be putting a level playing field around everybody, right? I mean, so that sustainability is tracked and they are not harming the environment, and at the same time, their mission towards becoming, building a positive future for all, while they are taking care of people through their healthcare. They're also ensuring setting an exemplary model for managing water, and that can actually percolate across the society when they do it.
Do you think there's a relationship we can build with data on healthcare and the good quality water that is given to all the hospitals? I'm just throwing some ideas.
No, absolutely. I think firstly we have concerns on the quantum of water that we are consuming. The groundwater by itself cannot be taken for granted, right? I mean, there's heavy metals in that, and so if you're not even giving good quality water for your patients, right? And RO has its own challenges. It takes away minerals from it. So that way, I think it is very important to have data everywhere, right? But at the same time, we have to focus on nature-based solutions and various other solutions that has been there for years, not just fully focus on tech. Tech should be a layer. Tech should not be everything, right? The tech should enable, but tech should not itself solve it, everything.
And your say on how tech can be used in some public good projects. I mean, Hitachi would have done it globally. So you think Karnataka could, maybe the same example of hospitals across the state is digitalized?
Yes,
data. So,
yes, same way. So, one of the main things that I do see is how everyone here already talked about how wastewater treatment plants have to be installed, how we have to reduce our dependence on groundwater, surface water by treating more wastewater, recharging aquifers, everything. But see, technology can actually aid in a proper management of wastewater treatment plants. How it can actually, see, wastewater treatment plants are huge consumers of electricity. Is there a way we can actually make them more resilient and sustainable by integrating it with renewable energy sources like solar, and not just any solar? So, putting panels doesn't mean that it's going to solve the problem. You have to actually optimally design the panels for that particular treatment plant, and then design the system such that it is self-sustaining. It will probably might not be completely self-sustaining. At least you can actually reduce your dependency on the grid energy.
Zero wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, that dependence on the grid will be reduced. So, and you can use the treated wastewater for recharging aquifers or secondary uses like flushing toilets, etc. And for all those kind of decisions, you need a very strong IoT and data analytics structure. So, an AI platform that the monitoring stations can actually predict how much solar radiance you can expect. Based on that, you can decide how much you should take from the grid. How much should you store in the batteries? What should be the size of the batteries? And how much should be the capacity from an energy perspective of your treatment plant should be? So such kind of an integrated solutions can be brought in. And since we are talking about water, wastewater, I feel is still one of the very strong ones.
Sure. Yeah. So do we have one more question? You have a question? Yeah. I was given extra 10 minutes, so I kind of, so now it's open for questions.
Thank you very much everyone to be here. So it's a very, very interesting event today. So I have fantastic, things to ask. We're going to solve the challenges for, 5,600 gram panchayat in Karnataka, right? So before I ask the questions, how many villages do we have in Karnataka? RDBR team or government or anybody? 26,000. 26,000, correct. So we are going to solve the challenge for over 26,000 villages. That means it is not an easy things to talk about. A simple water treatment, simple forecasting of weather, or simple water management. So we need to talk about how we can build an effective system where people of Karnataka talk about, yes, the government is going to solve our problem. How we can address this? Do we have accurate information? How many villages do we have a water source? How many villages, even though if we have a water source, what are all the villages require water treatment? And how many villages require a water distribution from the neighbor villages which has a water source? Do we have any centralized software system which can talk about an accurate information at district-wise, taluk-wise, state-wise, a dashboard? If you do not have such information, investing on any sensor, any IoT.
If you have a question specific, I think this is a wonderful point what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think we had a senior.
Definitely. So what I would like to recommend the government is understanding the pain point of the villagers, allow them to issue feedbacks. We should have such a system, feedback management system, as well as water information management system to open a water command center in Karnataka where it gathers the complete information. Then only can initiate budgeting, planning, design, thinking.
I think
that is what I request. That is what I request. Then you talk about sensors, IoT, AI, ML. So understanding the pain point of the villages is very, very, very important.
Sure.
That aspects I would like to bring into the government.
Thank you for this wonderful point. So, do we have other questions?
Hello. I'm Dr. Sanjay Swastha from ISC Bangalore. I just have one question to the panelists. We all are talking about the smart water management using AI, big data and all those things. But in our own houses we use this purifier, or in apartment we use WTP, and lot of water, more than 50% water goes into as a waste kind of thing. So what solution you are going to recommend? Thank you.
Take it.
One of the things that I learned from my wife is that she uses bioenzyme based cleaning, right? I mean, it seems like a very non-tech solution to a techie she talks, but it has its own advantage. Like it will avoid any kind of water getting clogged. The treatment in the wastewater treatment becomes much easier. I think we should always focus on what is small enough to do, big enough to matter. Like if we directly get it putting technology in the home, probably ration it in a right way, right? So some level of discipline is required. But unfortunately, water is so inexpensive, people would not concern about doing it. So I think it's a very vicious cycle that we end up not. But I think focusing on what is possible and how do you encourage the consumers on the challenges of water, the communication, the way we communicate, I think can play a big role. Though I would rather think of communication as a means to solve behavioral change to solve it than just look at tech as a solution.
So I think on tech, is there a solution? I think the question was how do you use tech to reduce water wastage? Right.
So your question was mainly for apartments. So in an apartment, if you have a water meter measuring your water consumption in every flat, that itself will actually ensure that you are diligently using your water. How? Because it's not just measuring. You need to have some kind of system or visualization or something.
I talk about the purifier technology which is developed and every household is using. I'm not talking about man. I am talking about the machine what we are using. We are not doing what humans are wasting.
Water purifier.
Purifier technology is there and we use that one every household. So how to improve those technology which is wasting more than 50% water in each household?
Okay, that's actually a little bit more complex.
I think
Something called, I have my Chandras from Watson in Europe. He has come up with a nanopores that actually doesn't require this electricity or anything. It just water just goes into it. Of course, the TDS level of water is to be understood. How much is it? Where you're getting the water. But I use that. I don't use the RO at all at home. I use Watson's water purifier. And I'm very much sure that this water is much better. So it's not purely a tech kind of thing, but it's a very simple nano purifier that ensures that we get drinking water.
Thank you.
Great question.
yeah. Okay, we have one more question. So do we have time?
Yeah, we have time for one last question. Yes.
Yeah, I know we always talk about data, right? Data is always a knowledge, right? And then we do use it for any decisions and policy making and other thing. And it's easy to say government should do this, government should take this initiative, that and all that. At some point, the responsibility starts at individual also. Like as you was talking about, the kind of education which needs to be given to the individuals in terms of conservation, sustainability and all those things should happen. Yes, it has to happen in a bigger manner, but question to panelists is, if you are given an option, instead of saying government should do this, government should do that, what is that using the data, what is that one of you could propose, what should be done and how you would want to carry it on so that it could be going to serve a bigger purpose. I know there is a global experiences, but not necessarily the same solutions or experience could apply here because it's a completely pressure system and here we have an implementation system in India.
Yeah.
So there are challenges, but what would you do if you are given that opportunity to resolve these issues with the data and with the smart management solutions?
So I would start with data literacy first. So people who are giving me the source of the data, I think they should be literate enough to understand what is the data and how do you manage that particular data. And second thing is, I will start with the test bed, because I will start with the pilot, taking a sample of data, not go a big bang approach, use some of our success stories which is already been there at a small scale, because you're not investing too much on it and you're not looking at too much of an ROI in the pilot phase, right? But as you start feeding in the data, similar like GenAI, you start at the smaller phase, as you keep increasing, feeding data into it, the scope expands and the cost also expands as you keep on going and analyzing the model, training the model, right? A similar kind of an approach is what I will do, because there's lots of data available. First of all, bringing in data literacy from where the source is coming in, because they also could participate in what is going on in this, right? It's not a rocket science which we are doing it, implementing this AI, ML and big data into it. But they are also part of that particular activity and they also can share the feedback. How can we work closely to improve it together? So it will be more together from a corporate, public, together, right? That's how I think is an approach to take forward.
Sure.
So I think according to NITI report, 70% of our water is contaminated, right? So I think if government can finance cheap this one or inexpensive water quality kits, right? I think Indian Foundation is doing good work on that, right? How do you ensure that you're able to get this water sample at very important places? How do you democratize access to water quality? At least starting with Karnataka, of course, we are sitting here. And how do we ensure this, using this data, we come with our water action plan, right? Because water, one is the shortage, other is water has multiple order of effect on if it gets into perennial sources or it gets to water sources where we drink, it has health impact, right? And so that way, that would be my take, right? If you want to solve, let's get the water quality in place. Using that, come with a water action plan. And when we solve the problem of water quality, I think eventually we'll be solving the problem of water.